Step 35, ovarian response. In IVF, it's very critical to do detailed analysis of IVF cycle. So you need to understand where the success or failure of IVF cycle is coming from. Ovarian response is one of the most important factors in IVF. I will teach you how you can analyze your ovarian response, how you can tell whether you had a good response to stimulation or poor response to stimulation. Ovarian response can be analyzed by analyzing three things: your estradiol levels during the stimulation, how many mature follicles you saw on the ultrasound scan, and the third, how many total number of eggs you got after the egg collection. These three parameters, looking at these three parameters, you can tell whether you had a low response, average response, or high response. In order to organize that, I have created a scoring system. You can use the scoring system and you can tell whether you had a low, moderate, or high response. That's called Rustamov scoring system for analysis of ovarian response in IVF cycles. In terms of estradiol levels, so if you estradiol levels on the day of the trigger, if the estradiol level is less than 2,500 picomoliters, that means you are having low response. Between 2,500 to 7,500, that's average. Higher than 7,500 picomoliters on the day of trigger is considered high response. Then you look at the mature follicles. These are the follicles on the day of the trigger, on the day you make the decision for the trigger. If mature follicles larger than 12 millimeter, number of those follicles, if it's less than 5, that's low. 6 to 15 is average. More than 15 mature follicles on the scan, that's a high response. Then total eggs collected in after the egg collection procedure. If you get less than 5 eggs in total, that's low response. 6 to 15 eggs, average response. More than 16 eggs, 16 or more eggs, that's high response. That's looking in these three parameters: estradiol levels on the blood test on the day of trigger, ultrasound scan on the day of trigger, on the day of decision making for the trigger, and total number of eggs on the day of egg collection. Looking at these three things, you can tell how you're responding. To summarize this, I created this total scoring system. You will give a score here for each of this, then add up and then look at your total score. If your total score is between 3 to 5, you can assume that you had a low response in that IVF cycle. If you had 6 to 7, you had a medium response in that IVF cycle. If your total score is 8 to 9, you had a high response in that cycle. Using this Rustamov scoring system for ovarian response in IVF, you can tell how your ovary is performing in your IVF cycle. That's very critical because your ovarian response determines how many mature and healthy eggs you will get, and how many eggs you get determines how many high-grade embryos you have. That's by far a very important factor in terms of achieving success in your IVF.